And we're waiting. Cool. I don't really know if it's working or not. But, sorry, I'm a little behind today. And if you don't have a handout, well, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the handout. Let me see, I'm finding Ignite Materials 2013, session manuals. This is something we tried to send to everybody. Those of you that have one, is it number 16 or 15? 15. Well, then hopefully this one will say 15 too. All right. So today's session is about pricing right and presenting your CMA. And I'm going to spend most of my time not talking about this. Just saying. And the point of this handout and this discussion has to do with pricing the property right when you do a CMA. I remember teaching this class about a decade ago, and somebody who was brand new raised their hand and said, "What's a CMA?" And I told them that stood for the Country Music Awards, something like that. Also, I remember being in a class where the instructor was asking, it was a real estate class, he asked, what's the difference between a real estate agent's comparative market analysis and a market data appraisal? And I said $400. That's sort of the difference. And so what I was going to do today, because some of the material in this outline, which is not necessarily relevant to life as we know it in Santa Clara County today, right? And though I have recordings of this from the past, if you're interested in hearing about exactly how my explanation of what this outline says. But what I thought I would do instead is actually go through the process of how to do a CMA, right? And how to integrate that information to some sort of a report that we could use. And what would be useful, does somebody have an address of a property that you would, yes? No? Is it a weird house located out where no other homes are around? Okay, well, all right. So before you give me the address, let me just, what I usually do as a starting point, and I have to admit I'm having difficulty seeing here from the side what it says. One of these says Realist 2. Realist 2. Okay. All right. And my logins are more difficult than yours. Maybe if I do this, my angle would be a little bit better. So this is Realist 2, a wonderful program. And your address was 17? Is that what you said? 7075 and JU, right? Now, I just hit enter because if we're close, we're going to find it, right? And the reason that I start with this is when yesterday I talked about a binder full of tabs, right? One of the things that I used to put in it was I'd have a tab on market information. And the question is, where would you find all that stuff? The answer is here, is where you'd find all that stuff. All right. Just making sure I'm broadcasting. I'm not sure if I am, but I'll know later. So this is also, those of you that have been around a while, I'm sure nobody here has. Is that the right one? 707 Angel Circuit? Oh, okay. No, I just wondering. I was just curious. That's all. Just curious. So in the old days, old school, this was called a property profile, right? They still call it that. They being title companies, right? And in the old days, you would call the title company up and ask for a property profile, and they would send some courier over, and basically it had this information in it, right? And the big mistake one could make if you're an agent is just handing a copy of the profile to a client and letting them look at it, because this tab here, which is comparables, and the comparables are title company generated comparables. And I have to admit they've gotten better, but there's usually a lot of issues with their comparables. For example, despite their protestations to the contrary, they don't seem to be completely good at distinguishing from creating a living trust, which is a transfer of title, certain other, there are many things, all they know is the title transferred, right? That's all the title company knows, title transferred. And then somebody wrote down what the amount of the transfer was. Well, if it was a transfer from a parent to a child or a grandparent to a child, or the creation of a trust or a whole bunch of other things, that number that they wrote down doesn't necessarily mean market value. Right? It doesn't necessarily mean that at all. It's just a number. And if you just print this out and show it to somebody, they're undoubtedly going to see a comparable or two that are on the list that just jumps out as being totally, completely inaccurate. And then you can explain to them why you gave them totally, completely inaccurate comparables, right? But I would just as soon not do it at all, right, rather than having to explain why later. The reason, though, one of the advantages of looking at this carefully, at these comparables, is because there are some actual sales that the title company knows about that we don't as real estate agents. They're called for sale by owners, right? And so a real for sale by owner that is accomplished without the benefit of a real estate agent being involved never appears into the multiple listing service, right? And therefore we wouldn't have it as a comp. And in Almaden, which is one of the areas that I worked, I can remember occasionally finding a comparable that wasn't in the MLS, that was a real comparable. And it made me look like I knew more when I was talking to the owner, because I had some comparables that the other agents didn't have, because I had taken the time to look at this. All right. So the goal is to look at this. By the way, if we look at property details, someplace down at the bottom, value map, print, save, email. Let me see. Yes. I went to the home page of the MLS and I clicked on Realist 2. They've cleverly hidden it. All right. So, but you might. So the idea of running this is that you're going to look at it. First of all, you're going to look at what this says and other information here, and see if it matches what they told you on the phone when you called and talked to them. Right? Many times the square footage they give is not this square footage at all. Sometimes it's not the same number of bedrooms and bathrooms. I had one, this was in Blossom Valley, that was 2-story, and the county records showed 1 story. Right. Now, usually, not always, but often when you see bedrooms that are not in the records and stories that are not in the records, it means they did it without the benefit of permits. Right? There may just be a mistake made by the county recorders, but if they say they have 4 bedrooms, but this shows 3 bedrooms, chances are they added a bedroom without permits. Yeah, what happens if it's done without permits is they make you get permits, and they make you bring it up to code or remove the addition. They fine you, and they reassess you. There's not people can buy things that do not have permits. I've sold a lot of homes with stuff that didn't have permits. I listed a house out on Reed Street in downtown, and it was the owner told me a duplex, right? But it wasn't, you know. And what they had done is they basically walled off the middle of the house. He had converted the attic into a bedroom also, which made it a triplex. And his argument to me is that it must have permits because the post office recognizes the 3 mailboxes, right? And I told him that's not accurate, right? And that the conversion of the attic, no way did they get permits for that, right? So, and the investor that I sold it to was looking for a property in the downtown area with unpermitted additions, right? And the reason is because they could rent it out, which is what the goal was, for almost the same amount as if it had permits, but they didn't have to pay as much to own it if it didn't have permits, right? And so I've had buyers that were looking for unpermitted additions, right? Just because it was cheaper than buying one that was fully permitted. Yes. And the MLS, this is going to become even more confusing when we get to the realtor property resource. But the MLS is based upon what real estate agents input about properties that are listed, sold, expired, canceled, withdrawn, and that sort of thing. Not necessarily, but they access the county records. So, for example, if you put in an assessor's parcel number, the MLS will try to pull this information into your listing when you input the listing, right? And then you could manually change it if you say, well, they're wrong. This is really 3,000 square feet. And then they're going to ask you, essentially, says who, right? Is that your or the seller's, or how did you come up with this square footage? No, because the MLS only looks at things that real estate agents did, and the title company looks at everything where there was a transfer of title. But you have to be careful, just because there was a transfer of title doesn't mean it was a sale. So, for example, if it's Joe Brown selling to the Joe Brown Trust, that's not a sale, right? But if it's these people selling to Joe Smith, right, and the new owner doesn't look like a relative or the same people, then it's probably a sale, right? If you have a sale in the MLS, the sales price shows. Well, if you're talking about a pending, there is a way in which they could withhold the information if they have a piece of paper signed by the owner. Yes, there are exceptions to that, although the default setting is you have to report the price. But there is a form the owner can sign that says, I'm squeamish, I don't want my in-laws to know, or whatever. You could look here in the title records and it might show you. No, we're now in title land. This is, the Realist 2 looks at title information. We're in the land of the title. Realist 2, this software that we're using, was actually developed originally for title companies to use, right? It's probably, you could look it up here because they usually state the value of the property for purposes of the documentary transfer tax. Right? They usually state the value of the property when there's a transfer for the documentary transfer tax. All right? So you just have to look and see. All right? It's very difficult to keep everything hidden. The other problem is that when the title transfers, the assessor will reassess it at the value of when it transferred. Right? You can keep it, taking it out of the MLS just, and I've had people do this because they sold for so low. I've actually had people do this, and the idea was they didn't want their neighbors to be hurt by a low comp. And so they requested that it not be included in the multiple listing service. All right. So you look at this, and it talks about the mortgage history. This, by the way, is a useful thing to look at. One of the questions that I suggested that you ask people is how much do you owe on the property, and what's your current interest rate? And this will show you, the mortgage history. And sometimes you might want to take a peek to see if it seems to jive with what they told you. Market trends is a useful, all of these things, by the way, can be downloaded and printed out. And it has medium home value. It has active listings, right? It's pulling some of this information from the MLS too, sales activities, and medium square foot price, foreclosure percentages, financial health, negative equity. You could the neighbors, I usually didn't print that one out. It basically tells you the names of all the people that live in the neighborhood. And I'm not too sure why, but the neighborhood profile is a useful thing to print out and certainly to look at. Not only does it have demographics, gender, housing, quality of life, income, the part that's really good is it has the schools and the school rankings. Right? It has the schools and the school rankings, and attractions and things like that. And the assessor's map isn't very useful. You'd have to download it. It's basically a plot map, and you have to buy the flood map, so I wouldn't do that either. So what we've done, and what I usually do, I don't have a pen or a calculator with me because I'm doing this sort of freestyle. But if somebody wouldn't mind, I just need to know 2574, 1974, and I can remember that it's a 1974, and I can remember that it's a 4.2. And if you've got any decent phone, you have a calculator, and later I'll show you why we need a calculator. All right. So what I've done is, and I leave that tab open, and what we now do is we go back to Matrix, and one of these that says Matrix Search, I can't see for some reason today, and this is Matrix Search. By the way, if I were doing a CMA on this, one of the first things I would do is go to the stats, residential, and if this is a single-family home, there's a bunch of these that we could run, but 95120, and let's say we're going to just start with average days on market to sale to list price ratio. It gives us a nice little chart. It gives us the data, and what I used to do is if you right-click on the chart, you can either save it or copy the image. And so what I used to do is I would use either I use Microsoft Publisher, but you could do this in Microsoft Word, and what I would do is paste the chart. I would have the title of the chart on one page. I would paste the chart at the top of the page, and then I would click over here, and notice it says data. I would export it as a comma-separated value file, which you can paste into Microsoft Word, and it'll take it as a table. It'll convert it into a table. So I had the graph and the chart, and I had the data. Right? Now, there are many people who don't care about any of this, but if you hit an engineer, right, and you've got graphs and charts and a table with the actual data, they're happy, right? As happy as an engineer gets. Okay? So, I would go and I would pick out a bunch of these and do them, right? And so you could have a section of graphs and charts. I'm not going to go through all of these, but you get the idea. And the hard part about the graphs and charts and all this is that you have to look at them and come to some sort of conclusion as to what they're telling you. Right? This is the hard part, right? Because somebody will say, well, what does this mean? And if you say, I don't know, I went to a class and the guy said, copy the charts and put in the data and hand it to you, and he didn't tell me that you were going to ask me what does it mean. And so is it a seller's market? Are they getting more? What are the average days on market? What is the percentage of list price to sales price? All those sort of things, okay? So I would always start with that. There's some other market reports that look kind of interesting, but I'm not going to go through them all. Basically, it'll show you everything that's happened within a zip code, right? The value of that, why don't I do one? An area summary report or a residential summary report by class and status, class, area, and status, creates a silver based upon entered criteria. So if we say single-family home, I'm just doing the first one, and I'm saying 95120, and we're just going to hit set criteria. Ooh, I need to have a close of escrow 0 minus either 30 or 90. How about 60? 0 minus 60. And this is what it's asking for, and this takes a while. What it's going to do is it's going to make a PDF that has a list of pretty much everything that's happened that closed in the last 60 days. Right? One of the things that I used to do was download everything that's happened in the last 90 days, all statuses in that zip code, and take it with me. I was tired of people saying, I heard that the Johnsons got this when they sold their property last month, and I'd say, just a second, let me look at that. And so you understand this one shows the MLS number, the address, the original price, the list price, the sold sold versus original price percentage, the sold versus list price, and the average days on market. The nice thing about this, look at some of these at the top, 245, 275, are they all selling in 10 days? No, they don't all sell in 10 days. Right? Some of these guys are pushing a year. And so this gives us everything that's happened in the last 60 days, everything that's sold. There are more of these reports. I hope this doesn't. I just gave them a zip code because we're doing a CMA on 95120, right? I thought that's what we're doing. What does this say? Price range. I usually just do 0 plus, and statuses. Why not? Let's just see what we get if we check them all. Now, some of this you might be thinking that I'm kind of over. What does it want? Oh, date range. 0 minus 60. Let's just keep it simple. And 179, and we hit generate, and this is going to give us another report. We're in Matrix. Matrix is the multiple listing service, the name of the software they use. One of the things you'll notice if you're having difficulty, first of all, our MLS has a YouTube channel. Did you know that? Which you can subscribe to. The only problem with subscribing to it is they're allowing real estate agents to post little testimonials about themselves. Why I'm the greatest real estate agent, right? The hardest working, smartest, most humble real estate agent ever walked, right? Those are the sort of things. And so now, because I subscribe to the MLS's channel, I get videos every day of cheerful real estate agents explaining how wonderful they are, right? Which isn't why I subscribe to the channel. But another thing about that is Matrix is the name of the software, and it's used elsewhere, including in Southern California and other states. And if you just Google search MLS space Matrix space tutorial or tips, you're going to find a whole bunch of stuff that people have done about how to use the MLS. Right? The MLS also has a bunch of trainings. So what this is doing, look at this guy. Single family active listings, 951, pending with release, pending without release, pending do not show, sold, closed. This doesn't have the addresses, but if you like statistics, we've got statistics. So one of the points that Gary Keller likes to make that's in our Ignite series is that the way that a new agent can beat experience is by market knowledge, right? And right now we're just talking about statistics, but your ability to discuss what's happening in the zip code where the property is located would probably help you a lot, right? What would also help you a lot is if you've actually seen homes that are on our market analysis. So we've done enough of that, I think. Is that all right? So you understand there's statistics here, there's market reports there, and you ought to play around with it. What we're going to do now is I'm going to do a CMA. I'm going to do a couple, right? I'm going to use, first of all, the Matrix CMA, and this is just a quirk that I can't do anything about. So, and I should be recording this. I went to search residential. And what I'm going to do is I sometimes start with all 8 categories. And the reason for expireds, cancels, and withdrawns is I want to see if there are any. But sometimes an owner will say, you know, I have this plan for selling my house, a strategy. And the strategy, this is the strategy, we're going to start really high. And then if it doesn't sell, we can come down later, right? I figured it out all by myself, right? So this is, you know, I'm going to probably do seminars. And I used to say to people, you know, I understand how you feel. Many people in your situation feel the same way. I brought a list of them, actually. We call them expired listings, right? That's what we call them. All right, so, but I want to see all of these. I'm going to do single-family homes. And to start with, I usually would do 4 plus, and this is a 2 plus, and maybe I'll later narrow it down. The zip code is 95120, so you're going to, of course, remember where it is. So what I usually would do if I'm doing a CMA, I mean, I might just start with 95120 just to see, and over here, status change date, I would do 0 minus 30, and I'm doing this just to look at this number here. All right, it's 104, right? And I'm just looking at it. That's way too many for me to do anything with. There are some zip codes, by the way, that when we do this, there aren't that many that show up, right? And what you're going to find is that we may not have an exact match. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the map search, and we're going to wait. And yes. I think this is easier and quicker to do. So a status change date is any change of status. So it would be, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the active ones later. So what I usually do, first, this is irrelevant in a discussion of a CMA. I want all status 1, all active listings, no matter how long ago they were listed. Right? If somebody listed it a year ago and it's still on the market, I want it to show up. but I don't want sales from a year ago, right? And I'm too lazy, too efficient to create a whole bunch of different dates, right? And so what I usually do is 0 minus 30, and when it says status change date, that's what change date means. It means that any change of status that's happened in the but if you had a listing that was listed 45 days ago that's currently active, it wouldn't show. But I'm going to later run the actives again, this time without any change date. All right. But I do this. I could be doing all this up here, but I'm just kind of lazy. Efficient, and I would just as soon do this and change it later. Now, I should have anticipated that our connection would be slow since we're doing a class. Right? Isn't that how it works? So while I'm watching the little thing go around, let me just explain the idea. Recent sales you want geographically close to the property. Pendings and closed transactions you want relatively close geographically. But what I'm going to do when I get to active listings is I'm going to expand the field. So, for example, in this area of Almaden, would somebody who's willing to live there probably be willing to live almost anywhere in 95120 that had the same price range? Right? You understand it? I listed a house in what I used to refer to as the slums of Almaden. Right? I don't know if you it was on Lillian, but anyhow, the slums of Almaden. And these aren't really slummy. If you're from the east side, you're like, what do you mean, right? But Lillian in that area, south or north of Leland High School, not as nice, right? But as a general rule, with a few little pockets, if this was worth $700,000 and somebody could find a home in the Woodside area or a Pasos Cerritos home, one of the Pasos, or Firefly or Butterfly, one of the flies, right? Why not, right? You understand? So what I'm going to do when I'm looking at active competition is I'm going to expand it. I'm going to expand it to where I'm basically looking at everything in the, to say it plainly, I'm going to use pendings and closed to come up with a price range. And then once I've got the price range, I'm going to look at everything that's available that would be even close to the same area that's active on the market. Because you understand, otherwise we're sort of like looking through a knothole, right, at the property. And the reality is that people, this is really taking a long time. Let me see what happens if I redo this. And it wiped out. No, did it? Yes, it did. I'm starting back at the beginning. All right. So why don't I, I'm going to just do these single family. And what I'm going to do is sometimes I'll just start with a precise configuration 4.2, and the square footage was 2,700 and something. So if you have a calculator, somebody who has a calculator, what we're going to do is take 2574 and multiply it by 0.90. 0.90. 2316, and now we're going to take whatever the original number was, and 2574 and multiply it by 1.10. So what I'm doing for you non-math majors is 2831. I'm looking at 10% less and 10% more. All right, I'm creating a little band of square footage. All right, and the age was 1974. So how old is it? Since I was born in 1974, I should. Why are you laughing? What? 39. That seems about right. So, I think I was divorced by 1974. But anyhow, it's just letting that go. So it's 39 years old, and so age. Where is age? And age is down here. One of the things you have to learn about Matrix is there's this hidden advanced search, and you have to click on it, and then you can add a whole bunch of stuff. Common questions people ask me is, how do you find short sales, and how do you have to add additional listing information. But as we go down, one of the things is age. I have a bunch of weird stuff, not all of it. So here's age. So if it's 40 years old, what I might do is say, how about 35 to 45? And when I'm doing this, what I want to do is swing back up here and look at this number. The one thing we haven't put in yet is the zip code 95120. And now 283, status change date, 0 minus 30. Let's just see what we get, 5. So in the entire zip code of 95120, in the last 30 days, there have been 5 sales of homes within that relative price range and within that relative square footage, 5. All right, notice I left the actives off because I was going to add those in later. We have to append the search. No, because the idea is to let it tell me. Right, right. And so what I might do just at this point, and by the way, this could take a little while to do a good CMA. Right? Sometimes it's kind of easy because there aren't any comparables, but if I click on results and I look at them, and this looks weird to some people because we've added some custom displays. And the way you would do that, if you said, well, I would like to have custom displays, if you go to My Matrix and you go to Settings, one of the things you can do, you should put in your email signature, modify your header and footer, and custom displays means you can pick other ways of displaying the information. But we're not going to worry about that right now. So we have a low of 800,000 and a high of 1,550,000. Right? So we're like all over the place. Right? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to, see where it says refine. That's not what I wanted to do. I want to go to actions. I'm going to click on criteria, and I'm back to this again. And what I'm going to do is add in active right now. I'm going to do all of this, and I'm going to click on map search. And once I get to map search, we're going to go up to jump to address. And the address of this property is 7075 ANJU OU. Locate, and guess how many are in our neighborhood? Nothing. Okay. Nothing active pending in the last 30 days. So now, what I would do when I look at this, there are different ways of doing a search from here. One is what's called a radius search. The problem with that is that it's going to cross Almaden Expressway. Hampswood, by the way, are citation homes and other things. The area, notice I mentioned I used to farm what was called Woodside. See? Woodside of Almaden. This is the area I used to farm. You can see all of the buzz of activity there. So by the way, what I would also recommend that you do when you're doing a CMA is the first thing you're going to want to do is to go drive and take a look at the house if you haven't seen it. Well, the problem is with the criteria. So if we, for example, were to go back to our criteria and we were to eliminate everything. So do you understand we can look at this either as a macro or a micro? And what I mean is that if you can start by just saying, I'm going to take a look at what's been happening in the area that's like this house and see if that gives me an answer, right, which it didn't. So what I'm going to do is go back to map search. I'm going to go back to, let me find this. Go back to jump to address, and I have 707075. It's harder for me to just stand and talk, let alone remember numbers and things. ANJOU. Notice I never have to fill the whole thing out, right? It's going to locate it. All right. So this is what it's saying has happened, and I may have left in the 30 days as a status change date. But notice there's not much happening in this area. So what we would normally do, assuming we were doing something in this area, this is the polygon search. And we would go up. Oh, it's doing this again. For some reason, it's doing this again to me, which means it's doing this weird. It's doing this weird thing, and it won't allow me to just draw a polygon. That's a quirk to this room and this computer, right? My other computer is doing something else right now, and it doesn't have this problem, but you can get the idea from what I did, right? You understand? You can get an idea. So what the idea, if you didn't get the idea from what I did, is using the polygon search to try and map out the relevant neighborhood, right? Which means it would be good that you knew the neighborhoods, hence geographic farming, right? I still know the Woodside properties, right? I still know what they look like. I know what the models are, right? And so, but the idea would be is to start by seeing if anything's happened in that vicinity. This is a market where a lot of times there are no comps, right? And for example, in this one, we're not going to find any comps. And so let me go back to our criteria. And what else did I have? It was a 0 minus 30. There was one match in that area. We're going to clear the map. I don't know how to, because I can't make the polygon search work, and probably not even the radius search. I'm not going to be able to do that, but you get the idea, right? Does everybody get the idea? All right. Now, one of the things that Realist doesn't do on this particular property, because you deliberately gave me a difficult one, I know, was sometimes Realist will come up with what's called an automated valuation model. And the last time this property sold was in 2003 for $760,000. Now, this, by the way, is something that would make an appraiser ill. But what I've done, I was farming Woodside. Everything's cool, right? I know the homes are all citation homes built about the same time. There's like 4 or 5 models. That's it. I know this stuff, and the guy calls me up and he says he wants to sell his house, and I show up, and in the middle of the Woodside, there's this little like mini development that some builder had built 10 semi-custom homes on about 20 years ago, none of which have sold since, right? And all of the comps are at that time 40-year-old tract homes, none of which look anything like these 10 semi-custom homes. And the guy had a creek in his backyard and a big backyard, and there are no comps, right? I mean, and so, so do you understand? Sometimes there are no comps. So I started by looking at what using lot size, right? Because I didn't put lot size in this criteria because sometimes I knew we weren't going to get a lot to begin with. But I tried looking at lot size, and then there was all over the place, and some up at Gray Creek and things like that, and the Greystone development, which were like really, they're all over the place. So one of the things I did is I went and looked at what he paid for it when he bought it. And then I found out from the multiple listing service what the average and median price in 95120 was back then. And I ran what the average and median price in 95120 is today. And I calculated what percent it had increased since he bought it. That in general, homes have gone up X amount since you bought your home in Almaden. And I showed him the number, and he said, that looks good, let's try that. Right? See, an appraiser wouldn't do this, but sometimes all you have is we know, what do we actually know about this property? It sold for $760 in 2003. Right? That's about the only piece of useful information we have right now. Is it sold for $760 in 2003? How much have homes increased in 95120 since 2003? Right? Well, that's something that could be determined. Right? So the other thing, so yeah, this one is going to be difficult because what is it worth $1.5 million? Probably not. Right? I don't know. Right? No, probably not. So again, I haven't gone and looked at those. The other thing that we can do is I'm going to go back to the Pro home page. Remember this page? And the other thing that I would, is this Realtor Property Resource. We're going to click on the Realtor Property Resource. And this is where I am right now. And this is something that if you haven't registered, you should register for it. You're paying for it already, whether you know it or not. I did classes on this a long time ago. I still have videos from 6 years ago on the Realtor Property Resource, and every once in a while somebody sends me an email about it. And when I walk around in offices and I ask people about it, they say, what? The what? And I said, the Realtor Property Resource. How do you get it? And I said, by being a member of the National Association of Realtors. How do I find it? Log into the multiple listing service. It's right there on the welcome page. You're kidding, right? This is just, it no longer surprises me. Now, to show you what the power of the Realtor Property Resource is, notice the default setting is for sale, neighborhoods, market activity, my listings. And we're going to just click on all properties, and you have to give me the address. It's 7075 ANJOUCREEK. And again, I'm going to see how good it is. Don't think there's a bunch of Anjou Creeks. There we are. Look at this. All right. This is an RVM. And with an RVM, remember I was talking about what did they pay and then how much is an increase? That's what these guys have done, right? And what it will say there is either a RVM or an AVM. AVM stands for Automated Valuation Model. An RVM stands for a Realtor's Valuation Model. Okay, this is an RVM. The difference between the two is that RVMs use MLS data and AVMs use, well, what Realist 2 had, title company data. So you can refine it, you can create a comp analysis, and this is what, based upon probably what they're simply doing is looking at what it sold for in 2003 and what that should be worth today given the trend in prices in that zip code. All right. Now, one of the reasons for starting with this maybe is that it gives me a rough idea, right? A rough idea, because first of all, let me just, this is not a science, right? in a different lifetime, this really seems like it. I used to teach a college course in real estate appraisal, right? And it may look scientific, but the definition of an appraisal is an estimate or opinion of value. Huh? It's just an opinion, right? And the appraisers don't have any more information than we have, and you already can see we don't have a lot, right? So I would always discuss pricing as a strategy with owners. Pricing is not a set thing. You go to Walmart, they lower their prices on something. I thought pricing is a set thing, right? And the dialogue that I would have with owners is that whether they like it or not, their house is going to be a commodity like a box of cereal sitting on the shelf, and there's a whole bunch of other cereal for sale, right? Do people buy cereal because of what the box looks like, right? Sometimes. Do people, so I carry my metaphors too far sometimes, but the idea is that your box of cereal needs to look attractive too, right? So, but once I have a relative price, now, do you understand why I emphasized yesterday you want to ask them on the phone what they think their home is worth? Have you been paying attention, well, I always say, have you been paying attention to what's been happening in the real estate market in your neighborhood? Yes or no? Yeah, we've been watching. Great. Do you have an idea what your home is likely to sell for? What range? All right. Then if they say, well, then when I show up, I'd ask them again. Do you have an idea what your home is likely to sell for? What range? No. Then eventually, now you see at this point, I have to. You can lose a listing easily if you don't handle this right. Right, because if they're thinking 1.1 and you're thinking 999, right? You understand this is an easy way to lose the listing. And if you say 999 and they're thinking 1.1, it could be curtains for you, right? Especially if somebody else comes in and says 999. Well, they probably wanted an easy sale. They probably didn't want to do any work at all. I can't believe that it's just such a low price. Why, we've sold homes not nearly as nice as yours for a lot more than that, right? You know, who do they want to believe, right? And then I'm going to get the listing, and after they've been beaten by the buyers for 30 days, they might be willing to lower the price to $9.99, and then it's going to sell, and I'm going to get paid. And you didn't, right? Do you understand? Plus, do we really know? You've already seen enough about this property. Do we really know what it's worth? Not really. Are there any strong, recent comparables of that particular square footage? By the way, one of the things that I would sometimes do, let me just open this in a new tab. One of the things that I would sometimes do, which on this particular one may not help us, but one way to find a really good comparable is to, if we have to clear all this stuff, a really good comparable. Sometimes I would do this just as a starting point. I click here, 95120, and what was the square footage? 2574. Now, if this is a tract home, 53 matches. So if this is a tract home, that 2574 is the way to identify it. And if I were to say 4 bedrooms, 53 matches. 0 minus 180, 2 matches. 4 bedrooms with that precise square footage. And so I might want to look at those. There they are. It's one property, a canceled and a sold. And this was 6 months ago. And they got $1 million. I know where they got the realtor's valuation model. This is the comp. Right? And it was a while ago. right? I went back 180 days, so within the last 6 months, which is as far as an appraiser would go. But this is the one I would be talking about, right? Because it's exactly the same square footage, you know. This is the one that's happened in the last 6 months. So, but the Realtor Property Resources already found that one. So why don't we go, and the nice thing about this is this makes a really cool handout. So, so do you understand, do we really, even though that other one sold, would it help you a lot if you had actually saw that one that sold before and looked at it when it was on the market, took notes of what it was, took pictures maybe, so that when now you're on this listing appointment, you can explain how theirs is different from that one, right? But the easy way to find out if we have any of the same model is to use the square footage and the number of bedrooms and see, right? Because it's an odd number, and the chances in 95120 of something else with that exact same square footage, it's the same model, okay? But it might be, so what we're going to do, the refine is we could change the RVN of this property. If we click on that just for fun, what it's going to start is by asking us to, is this information wrong? Right? Is this information wrong? And it rarely is, unless they've done stuff without permits. But if it was wrong, we could make a change. Then this is really cool. This is a list of different kinds of home improvements. Again, this assumes that you know something about the other one. Let's say it had its original kitchen, and this one, they had remodeled the kitchen. Well, what we can do is if we can go to, is it a major kitchen remodel or a minor kitchen remodel? And again, we don't really, this is not precisely accurate, but what we would do if it was a mid-range major kitchen remodel, we would select that. We would put in the month and day it was completed and the cost that they spent on it, and using the cost versus value data of what remodels look like when you sell property, it would come up with a nudge for the remodel, right? A nudge. Now, do you understand that this is still this is still art to some degree, right, than science, but are you better off now than what you had before? Which was, I have no idea. How much did you pay? Well, maybe 80, I don't know, right? And so one of the things that the other thing that we can do, it's got little sliders. Don't you love these little things on the computers? You can move them back and forth. So are the market conditions better today than maybe when, is the exterior better or worse, the interior better or worse, lot size or whatever? And this would be sort of relative to the market. So if somebody has done just like a killer job on landscaping and things like that, then you could make adjustments. They also have, I'm not really going to do a bunch of adjustments, but it would show the refined value. And then there's a lot of, look at all these little cool little things about what's going on in the neighborhood. And you can get more about the neighborhood, and here are the schools and things like that. We're going to see this later, all right? So we're going to go back to the summary. Yeah. You can do a search by school districts, yes, high school. You can search for a high school, yes. Yeah, there's a code. And it's not perfect, the results. So you should somebody should call the school district and give them the address. Some of them have locators, but sometimes one side of the street is and the other side of the street isn't. And if people get in the wrong school district after they buy the house, you'll be getting calls from their lawyer, unless it's a better school district. Then they write you a check. No, they don't do that. So build a comp analysis. So that everybody understand we did refine. Build a comp analysis. Create this. This is allowing us to do a comparative market analysis, which is what today's class is supposed to be on, right? And so we're going to confirm the facts. So with this, by the way, you could make your own changes here. Sometimes what agents say, well, does this change the title records if we do this? Sure, it does. The county recorder would allow any real estate agent to log into the system and modify the square footage. I'm sure they'll let you. No, it doesn't change anything, right? You understand? It keeps a record for you that you can see, but it obviously is not modifying what the county records say. So basically you look at this and you say, yeah, you confirm it. Now we're going to find comps. And what it's doing is it's giving us what we want. Notice we could put in public record, but that oftentimes gives us weird stuff, right? Because creation of living trusts and interspousal transfers, parent-to-child transfers, things like that. So I oftentimes will include expireds and canceled and withdrawns, right? Because this shows what people weren't able to get, right? But we may not, and notice it says last 6 months, and it's given us this configuration. Notice it's done something similar to what I was doing automatically, right? And if we click on search, all right, so we're looking at them. Valley Quail, not the same. Quail Creek, I've sold homes there. They don't look like, they're not the same. But it's not, this one recently sold. So what I would be doing is looking at the price. For example, this one, the Valley Quail Circle are really nice homes. I'm not saying that these are garbage, but those are nicer homes, I think, than Andrew Creek. They're not that far away, but they're a difference. So notice what we have here. What I would do is to keep it. And again, if you went and drove by and looked at them and you thought that they were all the same, you could put them in. This one was 233 days ago, right? And but what we do is notice what happens when I click on it. It adds. Here's another one which was 75 days ago. And Queensbridge, Quail Creek, Serenity, Briar Ranch, Quail Creek, Campisi, really, we're getting further away. And notice that this sort of assumes that I understand what this house looks like and what these others look like. Right? You understand? It sort of assumes I'm familiar with the neighborhood. Again, we're back to why I have a geographic farm, right? Because it's hard, by the way, to become an Almaden expert, just because there's so much just in Almaden. Right? That's hard. If you say I'm a San Jose expert, I don't care where. Right? Downtown Almaden, it's all good. You won't have any. You won't know enough. Right, to be able to be effective at this. So the other thing that I would do, notice what's happening up here, is that it's giving me a range as I add comps. Supposing they told me that they think their house is worth 1.2. Well, what happens if I add this comp? Notice the range just popped up, right? And if I added this comp, didn't change very much. But do you understand the way I would figure this out? This is dollars per square foot. So what I would do is I would go down here and I would find some that have a higher dollar per square foot. And by clicking on them and adding them in, it modifies my comps. Right? Now, I don't have to give them this number, but what I want is and Valley, let's say Valley Quail Circle, if I add that, let's say I'm going to do all of the creek circles, right? How about that? I'm just going to do creek circles, Quail Creek Circle. Ooh, that's a Quail Creek Circle, Campisi, forget that. All right, so now I've got a bunch of comps and update valuation and close. If I click on this, now we're up to 1,131,000. Right? Right? Based upon this, and what I'm now going to do is, so we've done this. I'm going to hit save. By the way, a photo is not available. If we went and, so 7075 was on the market at one time, but the photo's not available. Must have been a while ago. So it's asking me, do I want to save this as that? I'm going to say okay. I've logged anyhow, so I've saved it. I've got a comp analysis. Now what do? We go to reports. And these are the different reports. The one that we probably want is the seller report. And you can personalize it for the name of the client, type a message. The delivery is display now, where you can open it as a PDF. You could email it to them. I wouldn't necessarily do this right away. I would download it and look at it. You have to agree to the terms of service. If we click on Show Sample, this is what it's going to look like, all right? And it's actually going through like a little slideshow. So let's just see. So it's, and it's got pictures, and it's got the slider, it's got pictures, and it just keeps, it's got graphs, all those graphs and charts, heat maps. Heat maps show where property is increasing in value. If you don't know what heat maps are like, check out Redfin, right? But we have heat maps that show where properties are going up in value. Graphs and charts, maps, tables, more tables, individual property pages, and all of that as we go on and on and on. The full Monty report, 75 pages long. All right? 75 pages. By the way, there's also a market activity report, a neighborhood report, and a mini property report, and a major property, a maxi property report. And the property reports are things you would use for a buyer. Let's say a buyer wanted to make an offer and you wanted to intelligently discuss price. By the way, if you're showing properties, if you just take the addresses of the property you're showing and stick them in here and let it do its thing, you might get, mini reports that you would show you some comparables without having to do a whole lot of work. What I would recommend, these are ones that I've done, which I probably should get rid of, but for other classes. But what I would do is take a peek at this report. There's probably more pages than you want. And again, there's a page that says, we think your price is. And I usually do not show people that page, right? But notice it did a page on each of the comps. And my thing was, I would push out all those comps in front of them and ask them which one they thought was the closest to their property and let them pick one. And that would be telling me what they thought the price was, right? But this is a cool-looking CMA. By the way, we can do a CMA in Matrix, but it isn't as cool-looking. It's got a lot more filler in it, and every real estate agent has learned how to do this, right? To do the CMA. And it's, in my view, it's more time-consuming to do it in Matrix than it is to do it here. Realtor Property Resource. Remember, we done those graphs and charts and things like that. They've already got a bunch of graphs and charts, right? But I don't know if you want me to actually do a matrix CMA, but I don't feel like it. All right? Because you ought to learn how to use the Realtor Property Resource. By the way, the NARPR is the National Association of Realtors Realtor Property Resource. They have a YouTube channel. Who would have thought? And they have trainings on their YouTube channel that you can watch. How would you find this? Well, let me go here to one of these. If you're to go to YouTube, and we go to YouTube, I'm already logged into my YouTube channel, which makes it more difficult. But if you go to my YouTube channel and you go to playlists, what you're going to see is, wow, videos on farming, 411, which is a time management system, Google Apps and real estate, short sales, risk management, Ignite, 33 touch campaign. I don't know what this guy, should real estate investors get a real estate license? You can guess why does everybody know that I have a real estate school? Did you know that? Did you know that? Do you know anybody who's looking to begin an exciting, rewarding career in real estate? All right, I have for sale by owners, listing presentations, new real estate agents, a business planning. Some of these you're not going to be able to see. Excel, pre-listing, Realtor Property Resource. I have a playlist with 20 videos on things to do in the Realtor Property Resource. Zip forms, Facebook, Evernote, Flickr. That's MREA, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent. Blogging, lead generations, the Keller Williams listing system, natural hazard disclosure, Twitter, MLS listings is our multiple listing service. And I've created a playlist of a lot of the basic videos that the MLS has on how to do stuff. Pinterest, if you like pictures of food and shoes, this is the place to go. Google Plus, Google Reader, Mobile Bold, which is our premier training program. Videos from Bold, Realist. There's a class on how to use, not very long. WoofNet, eAgency, and eEdge. 59 videos in the playlist involving eEdge. A lot of them are very short on how to do things. Craigslist, Keller Williams, John Maxwell, and on and on and on it goes. Obviously, I have no life whatsoever because I have time to do all this. Did you have a question, Luby? I do RPR. No, you don't have to do the whole thing. If you look at one of the things that we can do in RPR, if we go through, it allows us to select cover page elements to include all elements, and then general report preferences. If we click on, that's for page numbers. But what I would do is, let me just click on this, get report. It should take, I'm number one in line. It should take 2 minutes. So what it's going to do, it's 1 minute remaining. What I would do is look at it, and what you're going to find is there's summaries. There's like an analysis of every single comp, but there's also a summary page that you could send to people. So you don't have to email them all 75 pages. Okay? You can select stuff. So, like for example, this is one I did in one of my other farm, and ProLane, and so right? If you wanted to give somebody a dollar amount, how about that? And I was screwing around with this, right? I was doing this so as to show agents, and here's the home facts, and there's a picture of the house. I sold this house in a different lifetime. Property history. This is the MLS information. The seller's report. There's a nice little graph and chart. This is a heat map that shows what's been happening. This is a seller's report, market health and comparisons. And one of the things that you can do, and this is, so here's a comp selected by agent, then here's pictures of individual ones. So one of the options we have is you could email this to somebody. It's a PDF. You can send them the whole thing if you wanted to. But you could go through and pick out pages that you like and send it to them. But the idea, I used to do this thing where I would tell people that I would give them an instant over-the-phone market analysis of their house. Call me. I'll tell you what your house is worth. Right? I put up postcards that said that. I had Realtor Property Resource. Right? And then they would call me. They have to give me their address. They have to give me their address. And I had a list of, have you made any significant remodel, and I just would type in their address and hit, the thing, and just, first it has an automated valuation model, right, or realtor's valuation model, and I could click on a button and it'd be comps and things like that, and I would chit-chat with them about their house, and I would say, well, I haven't actually seen your property yet. Right, and so all I can do is give you a rough indication, a rule of thumb based upon what's been happening in the neighborhood, but you're probably in the range, something like that. Could be a little more, could be a little bit less, depending on the condition of your property. When do you plan on selling it? When do you plan on selling your home? And I offered them over the phone, call me, free market analysis. Right? And if you have the Realtor Property Resource open, it's not that hard to do, right? You just type in the address, hit enter, it pops right up with a valuation model. And if it says AVN, it means there aren't a lot of comps in the MLS, right? If it says RVN, it means they had something in the MLS that they were basing this on, right? And it wouldn't take me, because I would ask them enough questions, by the time I got around to having to talk about what their home was worth, I'd already gotten to that point. All right. So I'm required to talk for at least 2 hours. No. So was that enough? Was that the handout? The reason I'm not going through the handout, there are different strategies in the handout which are not bad. One of them is to ask people if you want to do it in a sort of a passive or neutral or aggressive, pricing. What kind of strategy do you want? I've had people that would say, I want it sold as quickly as possible. I don't want there to be any trouble, and I don't want to overdo it. I don't want to, because people, I know in this market people that have lost their sales because they were penurious, right? Greedy, I think it means greedy. They were greedy, and they kept having transactions not closed because they were greedy, and they ended up getting less money. Do you understand? Over time, and this is all in this handout. A lot of this is just old stuff. Let me just summarize what your handout was going to say about pricing. Right? There's graphs and charts, and the Keller Williams listing presentation, we have them. If you want more of the graphs and charts, if you run the standard matrix CMA, they have all these old graphs and charts, and the most important ones are most people are going to look at the home in the first 2 weeks. Right? So, and oftentimes, this is a conversation to have with people, the first offer is the best offer. Right? Oftentimes, the first offer is the best offer because those people are paying attention. and they're really focused, and they come and they look at it and they see it and they make an offer. And I've had people say, well, if somebody offered us that in one day, all right, well, let's see what we're going to get in a week, and it ended up selling it for less than what the first offer was. And this is the why don't we start high and then we can always come down later. So when there's the most interest in the first 2 weeks, you're priced over the market. And then as soon as interest drops off, you now competitively price your home, right? Which usually means people that start high and go down low end up netting less money than people who start at a competitive price, right? And in a market like that, a competitive price might mean multiple offers over the price. If you start too high, I know agents that I'm coaching that have listings that they started high and they gave it a week and a half or 2 weeks and said we're going to take offers on Tuesday at noon, and the agent called me at noon. They had no offers by noon, right? So much for their pricing strategy, right? And then eventually they trickled in, right, and they had 3, and everybody felt disappointed that they only had 3 offers. And they went with the highest one, even though it was a low down payment, and the lender had the same name as the real estate company, and it fell apart. They went with the second highest one, which was also a low down payment with the same lender and real estate company, and it fell apart. And now they're at the third one, which is the one I had suggested they go with in the first place, which has a large down payment from a lender everybody's heard of, and it's going to close. And these people were buying another property, which they hadn't made contingent, because, of course, in this market they're going to have no trouble selling, and they didn't sell in time, and they lost the other home that they were going to buy because they were greedy. Right? Did you understand undercovering people's motivations about this? It's not just we want to get the highest price we possibly can any way we possibly can get it, right? Because a lot of times that means not taking the stronger offers because they might be a little bit lower, right? Just saying, right? Any other questions or thoughts about this? Anybody? Oh, I didn't say they were most important, but there's a series of graphs. The ones that shows 2 weeks and then it goes down. There's one called the pricing pyramid. There's one about starting high, you end up low. These, we had them at Century 21. Keller Williams has them in their presentation materials and MLS Matrix. If you were to run a CMA, they have all the standard stuff, and you can print it out. Right, and I don't really, they're going to get that from every single real estate agent, from every franchise company. If you're Coldwell Banker, you have the same group of charts. Century 21 has the same group of charts. Keller Williams has the same group of charts. The MLS has the same group of charts. And I'm not too sure that some of them, like the first 2 weeks and some things like that, you can explain, show them, but we've got them on mykw.com, right? But they're also here. The pricing pyramid, right, shows that as you go up in price, it narrows the number of people, right, that are going to be able to buy it. It's anyhow, I get bored by all those things. Okay? Yes. I just showed you where it shows the value of upgrades, but what you're probably looking at is what's called a cost versus value report, and Remodeling Magazine does it. It's not really done by zip code, but and Hanley Wood, by the way, this is the information, this description by Hanley Wood is what the Realtor Property Resource uses. And so you can notice this is done by region I don't think you can break it down by zip code, but it's not that. They don't have enough data. I've never seen zip code breakdowns, but you're welcome to Google search it. But I know that Realtor Property Resource is using Hanley Wood data. I know that because I've watched their videos. Hanley Wood is the organization that compiles this information. Hanley, Hanley Wood, which is someplace. And notice it's talking about the National Association of Realtors, Realtor Magazine, and I don't know where, it said Hanley Wood when I first logged into it. Someplace. But that changes. What is the most successful pricing strategy? It depends upon what the seller wants and whether or not we're in a rising or falling market. I always believed that it was better to go a little low and create more of a buzz. There are some agents who are somewhat reviled right now, and there are ethics complaints against, who would just list homes at 50% of what they're worth, just to create insanity, right? And I won't mention the company they're at, but it's Remax, and they've been doing this, and there's actually ethics hearings going on right now. So if it was 600,000, they would list it for 300,000 and just wait for chaos. No, these guys just do it as a way. Yeah. Right, and the reason that they were doing it is that they know that if they create that much excitement, people might call them as the listing agent, right? Which is what they're trying to do. They're trying to use this as bait to steal your clients from you, right? Yeah. Yeah, but that's what everybody says. Why don't we start high and it'll come down later, right? Which means that it's overpriced. I would show people, one of the things that I would do is I would go to Matrix, and one of the things that you can search for is days on market. And ask Matrix how many properties are active, pending, or sold that were on the market for more than 100 days. Right, and you'll get a list. There's a lot of them, and even in this market, right, they closed in the last 60 days that were on the market for more than 100 days. And I used to print these things out and say, I understand how you feel. That strategy. A lot of people, I hear this all the time. I brought a list of people that tried that same strategy. Well, then they're not a real seller. It all depends. In this market, this is just my opinion, which is not necessarily consistent with Keller Williams' stated policies or other trainers. I would rather have a listing right now, even if it was overpriced. I would rather have a listing. And then I could do open houses. People might be calling me. I might find I could do it just listed in the neighborhood. I might actually, and it might sell. I would also ask them for a really long listing term, 6 months. I got the guy in Sunnyvale to sign for 1 year. I told him I didn't care that my kids could inherit the commission in my will. That when his house eventually sold, and it took like 9 months, right? And the market kept going up, and he kept coming down, and eventually it sold, right? But he was just, he didn't, if we get a certain price, we'll do it. So in this market, you see, the other thing about pricing is that, as you can see, it's not that clear always, right? The idea, the sort of the premise that's in this outline and almost all trainings about doing pricing strategies, the premise is that we actually know what the property is going to sell for. And a lot of times we don't, right? Especially when you have semi-custom homes or custom homes and there aren't any comps, We don't know. We don't know. Okay. I went to YouTube, and my channel is called 24 San Jose. 24 San Jose is my channel. 24. I'm already logged in to Google, so Google will find it. But if you go down, I don't know where all these other people came from. That's me, and that's me. If you haven't guessed. And this is my channel. If you click on it, you're going to see. I've got like a small number of videos that I've made, like 111, and then I have a playlist of a couple hundred more videos. The NAR, how about this? We go to NARRPR, and guess what? The Realtors Property Resource, notice it says I'm subscribed. They have a channel. And other people don't like it, but if you click on it, you're going to see that they have uploaded a bunch of videos. And you can watch videos and videos and videos. They have instructional webinars on how to use RPR. All right, that's it. I'm done. All right.